Welcome back to another episode of the Energize Your Online Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, Kate, let's get down to business. We've just been messing around before recording this podcast. So now we're going to get serious.
I've been deciding which actor surgeon would be the most effective to operate on us if we had to choose an actor surgeon. So
yes. And take a moment to think about it. We'll reveal our top answer at the end of this episode. And I really think we will. Anyway, we're going to dig in today. We're going to talk about actually kind of the second part of a series that we have ended up doing. Yes. A/B tests that you can do to increase the results on various things. First one we did was A/B tests you can do for email, and we'll include the link in the show notes. And today we're going to talk about tests that you can do on your opt-in page with obviously the end results, the hopeful end result to increase your opt-ins. Your opt-in page has one purpose, and that is to get people to take the action on that page, to get people to opt in. So all the tests we're going to do are about getting people to take that action.
Yes. Let's dive right into the first one because we've got 6. And if we end up with more throughout the course of the episode, we'll see. But we're promising you 6 and we'll see where it goes. Yeah. We always surprise ourselves. But the first and foremost is testing your headline. So the actual copy that makes up your headline. And for this, obviously the hero area, which is typically the top of the page that is above the fold, which is before people have to start scrolling. But you can also test headlines in other sections of the page as well. You want to do one at a time for a true A/B test. You only want to change one element as a reminder so that you actually know which element had an impact or didn't have an impact. So if you did 3 different headlines in 3 different sections, you wouldn't know which one of those actually moved things in what direction. But I think the place I would start is that initial headline, because often people on an opt-in page, they might not get to the rest of the page. And the other key thing is that message, if you do want them to maybe see other copy on the page, or at least get them to take action right then and there, that copy is going to do all of the heavy lifting. It has the most important job on that page.
And I think one of the easiest places to start creating is test a headline that leans into the benefit of what they're going to get out of opting in. What are they going to end up with, right? What is in it for them to take that action? What is the end result that they're going to get? For our circuit sales system students, we know that a great place to start is to use the name of your video for the headline, since our students know we work hard to really perfect that.
Packing the benefit. Yeah,
exactly. But from there, you can try changing out different words. You can try maybe leaning into a different benefit to see if maybe people respond to that one a little bit more. Some of the times, what can seem like a subtle nuance can actually make a big difference in terms of people opting in. And we said it in the previous episode, but I do want to say it here again. Obviously, with everything that you're putting out in the world, you're putting your best foot forward, 100%. But we test because we're also not psychic. We don't always know exactly what's going to get people to take, and it's not a matter of taking action or not taking action. It's taking more action, or I should say more people taking action. It can sound kind of silly to say, oh, well, I have a 30% conversion rate. I want to test it and get it up to 32 or 33. Some people might say, well, that's 2 or 3 percentage points.
That's huge.
Exactly. In 100 people, that's 2 or 3 more people. 1,000 people, that's 20 or 30. 10,000, obviously that's 200 to 300 people. Math. But that can represent big changes in the number of people that actually purchase your offer. So sometimes what can seem like a little test can have huge ramifications down the line. So this can be, the headline is a great place to start out with and get creative, but also make sure that you are, as Kate said, you're testing it for the best efficacy as possible. Everything else on the page is exactly the same. You're just testing one element against the other element. And a lot of landing page software will let you do a split test, an A/B test. It will facilitate it for you. So all you have to do is set it up, sit back, and then watch the results come in, which is actually a lot of fun. We're big fans of testing at this company.
Yeah, super fun. One thing I want to point out too is that obviously if what they're opting in for is free, definitely include that. But I think the mistake a lot of people make is relying on free to be a compelling enough reason for people to opt in. Turns out people need more of a reason to opt in than just that something's free. They're giving you their email, potentially their phone number if you're texting them as well. They need truly what is the benefit to them? What are they going to get from whatever it is that you're going to send them? Not just that it's free.
Yeah, it's still a transaction. When someone is giving you their email, I know that we can sometimes be like, well, just give it away. But it is something
Trust.
Exactly. There's a trust factor, there's a time factor, all kinds of stuff. So they do need a reason.
Yeah. The other thing I want to remind folks too about, in case you didn't listen to the first episode or any of the episodes where we've talked about looking at metrics, that for any of these tests that you're running, you want to look at a substantial amount of people going through this. So if you've gotten 5 people through in the A/B tests, that's not giving you enough data to make a true decision that is going to make sense for your business. You want, I would say, honestly, at least 100 people going through, and even at least, honestly, I would say probably closer to 200. So 100 people who've seen both versions of the opt-in page. And at that point, you'll likely have a pretty good sense of whether or not this is making a difference, not making a difference. And as a reminder, it might be, if it's pretty equal, then go with which one that you think is stronger. If it's really, truly 50-50 split, then that kind of puts the ball in your court to make the decision.
Yeah, pick your favorite. And then move on to the next thing to test.
Yes, and test it again.
Which, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
As I say, test the headline multiple times. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Or multiple different ways. You can always be tested. Honestly, with our brands, I think we almost always have tests running on not just our opt-in pages, but sales pages, emails, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because it's like Nicki said, even that 2%, even if it's 0.5%, if it's going in the right direction, that's huge. And it can give you more information if you're using similar messaging in other areas of your business. So for example, if you're testing a headline on your opt-in page and you're using similar copy in other places, maybe that gives you information to update it and test in those other places to see whether or not it bumps up whatever metric you're testing in those other places.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement. Another great thing to test, and this one's nice because it's a relatively easy one, is testing whether when people opt in, whether they have to click a button and then they get a pop-up box to fill in their information, or whether you just have the form embedded in the page. So they get to the page, they either see a button, click here to opt in, or whatever, get me the free video now or whatever, although that we'll get into that in a second. Yeah. Or they see the open forms for them to fill in.
With the first name, email, whatever information you're collecting.
Exactly. You cannot know in advance. And the thing is, too, is that even if you're like, well, I heard that this person did a test and they saw this result, your audience could be totally different. Even if you think your audience is the same as theirs, because your page is different from their page, you have a different company from it, you could have different results. So you want to test it for yourself.
Yeah, just very anecdotally. Personally, aesthetically, I like the pop-up because it's just a clean button. The page looks super clean. The pop-up pops up. It's another design element. It looks really clean. Aesthetically, I like it better. On our brands, we started testing the form directly on the page. And guess what? That's what won for us across, I believe, all of our brands and all of our audiences, because that's another thing too. You can test on different audiences to see if these different tests make a difference for each of them. For us, the pop-up, I want to say, is gone, I want to say, from most, if not every place.
But we will also continue to test it. Exactly. We will probably go back and run the same test. 6 months, we'll see what's on the testing schedule. Maybe somewhere between a year, 6 months and a year. Because
things change.
People change. Society changes. People's expectations change. Maybe by then there'll be a whole different way of opting in. Yeah. We want to be continually testing this because once we run one test, that doesn't mean that's how things are going to stay forever. But again, this can be really, really fun.
Yeah. And it just gives you more information to hypothesize about what's going on. So in this case, we're like, oh, maybe our users really like they see it, it's a visual, they know exactly what to do, but it's one less step, it's one less action for them to take. Are there other tests we can run in other places that also eliminate a step? So it's eliminating a click. They don't have to click the button, see the pop-up, and then click again. What other places are maybe we adding an extra click for users that could potentially increase opt-ins or conversions or whatever, again, depending on the place.
Exactly. Another test that you can run, pretty quick and easy one, is if you have buttons on the page, and sometimes you'll have buttons that anchor people down a little bit further if you have a longer opt-in page. Again, more on that coming in a second. Test the button color.
It amazes me every time. I think the first time this was at one of my first jobs as a copywriter, and we were running a test like this, and it was a color outside the brand palette, which made the designers just wildly not happy about the test. And unfortunately for them, the color that was outside the palette won. And so I'm not sure if it became kind of just a color in the palette or just this is the button color henceforth. And I'm sure they kept retesting it too, just as we do. We continue to test various colors in our palette, but also we've looked at certain colors to make it pop, and that the button popping works. But again, this is fascinating because on some of our opt-in pages, different colors work, again, depending on the different audiences that we're running traffic to these pages from. And so it can help to have opt-in pages for your specific audiences so you can see if that does make a difference based on who's seeing it.
And I mean, it's just kind of a bonus. You can test color in other places on the page as well. You know, maybe in your headline, there are one or two keywords. And I mean, talk to your designer. It's like,
don't go rogue.
To a design professional. Exactly. We're not a tax. We're not an attorney. We're not a mental health professional. Talk to a professional. But I've seen people take a headline and it was, all in black type and highlight a word or two in pink or in something else just to make those words catch attention. That could be a test that you run. Or if you are doing a form instead of a button, maybe the headline on that form is a different color. I mean, again, you want to do one test at a time, but there are so many different options when you start playing with color.
Yeah. And as you said that too, the background image, swapping out, we've done this on several of our brands to show whether people are involved or we remove people and it's more of, tropical palm trees or whatever it is, a cafe, an office, all of the different types of imagery that you can put on the page. Does that change things as well? I know we said 6. Now we're going to give you way more than 6, but if you're kind of getting excited at the opportunities, there are so many opportunities. So I would recommend too, just keeping a list somewhere if you have a project management system or even if it's just a Google Doc of the various tests that you could possibly run and prioritizing them based on which ones you think might have the biggest impact. And you can start to reprioritize those too. If you test button color and you're like, that didn't really make a difference, maybe I'll save color tests for a little bit later and maybe try some of these other ones and see if they have a bigger impact.
Yeah. Well, and we have a list, but I'm really going rogue here, Kate, because this just jogged my memory on something.
Go ahead.
Talked about images. You can test out images of yourself as well. I was doing a coaching call for Circuit Sales System, and one of our students was showing me her opt-in page, and she was saying, I know this image looks kind of funky. It was a little bit grainy. It looked like she was in the middle of saying something. It looked kind of not down and dirty, but not perfectly put together. And
just could be a good thing. Yeah.
Well, that's right. So a little bit more unpolished is the right way to put it. Thank you, Kate. And she said, I put this unpolished because I did another training and they said that when you put an unpolished image on the page that they got much better results. And I said, okay, this is super interesting. And I definitely see why you would have done that. But I really want to recommend that you test it because what she is selling is a course that teaches other women to create their own online fashion boutiques. Yes. And so my hypothesis is that the people who are going to want to be in her program are going to want to see a picture of her that looks fashionable and looks put together and looks professional and looks aspirational. Yeah. So I should reach out to her and see if she ended up doing that test, because that kind of goes back to the idea of like, well, but they said they ran a test and this kind of the unpolished version did better. Sure. For their audience, it was other marketers and it was lots of maybe like 60-40 men to women. But not that necessarily matters. But for that brand, unpolished made a lot of sense. For her brand, and again, test it. I could be wrong, but for her brand, I wanted her to test that because my hypothesis is that her brand that are interested in following her to create an online boutique want to follow someone who is fashionable and who is aspirational and who looks friendly, but also looks polished and put together. So you can even test images of yourself, maybe images of you smiling, images of you looking more serious, whatever your brand is, but you may find that your audience responds to you one way or another. And we could really go down a rabbit hole here, because if you let's say you test photos of yourself, and this is just the opt-in page, so you have to do more tests, but say you do opt-in page testing and photos of you smiling versus photos of you kind of looking serious and I'm going to get stuff done. If one of those wins by a landslide, you may want to start taking more photos of you in that style and using those in more places.
Yeah. And then testing it on sales pages, which we'll get to in another episode. Yeah. We alluded to this next test a little bit earlier in terms of the call to action when Nicki was riffing off various whatever your button copy is. Turns out, yes, call to action copy, great thing to test. Does changing the copy on that button, and even if you have a form, there's probably going to be some sort of, whether it's a button or it could be a text link to submit that form. So that copy too is submit the straightforward, submit this form. Does that work best? Is it give me my free training right now? Does that work?
Yeah. Sign me up.
Yep.
Give it to me. Which I know sounds silly, but for some brands that might work.
It could work. Could work.
Test it. Yes. Now you might also want to test one with a little bit more specificity. Like Kate said, give me the free training or
send me my video now, whatever it is. And you can test, I think too, I'm saying me, send me my free training as the user, me being I'm on the page looking at it, but it could also be something more like get your free training and see if that works, talking to them and you versus as if, I don't know if that makes sense.
Person versus
person. Thank you. Yes. Like grammar.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. That is a good point. If you are referring to them as you throughout the page,
then
it is a little weird to change the button to say, get me my, because you're calling them.
It does drive me bananas, but test it, because the other thing that drives you bananas is click here. But guess what? Sometimes that works, especially I've found personally with older audiences that might not understand that you can click a button. They might not understand the elements of your page, what is clickable, what is not. So you might have images that are linked that go to things, but some people don't know that when they're hovering over what to look for in that icon, the mouse changes so that you know that it's clickable. There's plenty of folks who don't know that's a thing, especially, I say age-based, but it can also be younger generations too, of just who maybe they're used to their phones and they're tapping. I think that's the other thing. If thinking about the mobile version versus your desktop version and where people are going to be consuming this. So that's another thing to think about when it comes to button copy too, like tap here. Is 80% of your folks, are they opting in on mobile, where something like tap is more of the language versus click? I mean, 6 one half dozen the other, but you never know is the point. Test it.
Yeah. Test it. Another thought, especially for your opt-in page, is content. How much stuff do you need on the page? Personally, I like to have more stuff and then scale back as we test. That tends to be, I like to have the stuff there and then remove it, because then
it's much easier to hide it. Yeah.
Easier. Yes, exactly. But you may start out with an opt-in page that has a headline, a subhead, some information about what they're going to be getting. Maybe there's a profile of you, kind of a bio about you. Maybe you have some testimonials about you and your program. You could have all this stuff on the page and then run a test where you remove one of those things. And if that test where one thing is removed does better, then test removing something else, test removing something else. Or you could this is one place where I'd say you can do a bigger test, but it's just a fundamentally different test where you do your long opt-in page versus an opt-in page where it's really just your headline, maybe a subhead, and then the form. And so long and involved, not even long, but longer and a little bit more involved, a little bit more content to kind of persuade them to take action. There are some brands that perform really well with just a very simple opt-in page. We have found historically that ours do not. However, we will continue to do that testing because you never know. And we would strongly recommend you do the same.
Yeah. I mean, we recently ran a test on one of our opt-in pages where we have, as you go along too, you'll probably have more content, more testimonials, which we'll get to testimonials in a minute. But speaking broadly, we had specific video testimonials from students that were part of a particular audience. And so we added, I want to say there were 3 or 4 different videos on the page. And my hypothesis was this is too much. The videos will be distracting from getting them to take the action that we want them to take, which is opting into that form. Turns out when we ran this a couple of times, just to be doubly sure, the page with more content won. And so again, that's a test we'll continue to revisit. And maybe we take away and say, does 2 videos work better than 4? Does 3 work better than 4? 4 right now works better than 1, but there's so many combinations. And so testing all of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is an element, is testimonials on a page. Yeah. I think so many people think testimonials are for my sales emails or things like that. But remember that often when people are getting to your opt-in page, they either don't know you at all. They might be just cold traffic from an ad or from something else. Or maybe they know you a little bit. Maybe they've seen a little bit about you on social media, but they don't know much about you. And yes, even though they're just giving you their email address, it's still an act of faith, right? Like I'm giving you my email address. I'm trusting that you're not going to sell it. I'm trusting you're not going to send me a bunch of crud. I'm trusting that even if you email me, you'll actually let me unsubscribe if I try to unsubscribe. It's an act of faith. And when you show them testimonials, it helps them go, oh, okay, this person is legit. I can trust them. Mm-hmm. And also too, wow, it looks like their program is pretty good, or the things that they do are pretty good. I'm extra interested in getting whatever they're signing up for. This is just the tip of the iceberg, though. We say nothing else, but really we could dig in, because and you'll be able to too. As soon as you get onto your pages, you think, well, I could do this, or I could do this. The key though is not to get overwhelmed. Just take it test by test. Start with your headline, because that can be a lot of impact right there. But all of these can offer opportunities. And what do we give you? I think we said 6. There's probably closer to like 9 somewhere in there. Lost count. But let's say each one of those tests could get you 1 percentage point higher. And you do all those tests, you've gone from a 30% opt-in rate to a 39% opt-in rate. And that's massive. Mm-hmm. So even if each one of those was only quote unquote 1%, by the end of that, it ends up being huge. And all of the traffic that you're sending through there, it can have a massive positive effect on your business. There's actually one more thing that I want to discuss before we finish this episode. And that is to follow up on the
most important. Yeah.
Yeah. The actor that we decided would be the one that we would be most comfortable letting perform surgery on us. So if you haven't guessed yet, take a moment, pause us. Kate, would you like to reveal that actor?
It's Ellen Pompeo.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yes. She spent how many seasons? 20 some seasons, 30 seasons. She must have picked something up on Grey's Anatomy.
She had to have. Yeah.
Absolutely. Run your A/B tests and think a little bit about Ellen Pompeo. Yeah. Worst comes to worst, there are probably worse actors that could perform that surgery. So that's what we have for you. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.